Hello, this is going to be a quickie little dirty tutorial on how not to buy an expensive hammer, because I looked up that the fancy hammers, they cost around 60 frigging euros or something, and I thought I'll just make my own. I found this in the metal detecting hunt. This is a French style carpenter's hammer. It's called a Chiserrois or something. And then I simply bought a handle, which is a dish handle. It's a pretty nifty little handle, and I'll make myself a hammer for €1, not 60. Actually, now that I look at it again, judging by the size and the types of deformations here and the place I found it at, it was probably used for masonry, because the building there was a 120, 140-year-old, very, very big barn with tons of stones, and maybe this was used for chipping rocks, definitely not for carpentry. It also had too much deformation here on the upper side, which means it was striking. That's a beautiful little hammer. It's coming out. It's coming out of there, out of the rust. At the moment I'm using this plane to plane down these surfaces so that they fit inside of this square hole right here. By the way, I'm pretty sure this is hand forged because it's very irregular. The inside of this square holding place has some kind of dents. Now I'm just fitting it inside. I already tried to force it in there. I forced it in about halfway, and now I have marks of the material mass that I have to shave off. Almost fits in there. And the good old trick to get it on is to do a motion like this, basically. And it goes on by its sheer mass by itself. And while planing and stuff, it has to be as symmetrical as possible, because otherwise then the hammerhead will go on in a crooked way. And to get it off now, since it's too hard, I'll use the smallest other hammer I have to get it off in this way. And it's a truly elegant process, but because here you can clearly see of where it caught onto the material and where you need to take the material off actually. For example, these parts didn't even get touched. And I'm also switching to my Veritas end grain plane. I marked, and thinking ahead of everything, I marked where the hammerhead ends and where it starts, and I'll cut this part off. And now I just have to do the classic wedge attachment. You all know it, you've all seen it. Now I'll drill a tiny little hole around here maybe. And there you have it. So currently I'm constructing the wedge. Unfortunately this is not the correct grain direction, but I at least found a piece of oak. This is oak. I'm using my fancy Japanese chisel and my carpenter's hammer that I made years ago. Slowly but surely I'm shaping out. So this is the shim I came up with, and one thing I just realized, definitely a little trick, is that first you put in your glue, then you put in your dowel, and only then you on your hammerhead, because otherwise you could not force your dowel in there because it's going to be too lodged and too tight. I'm speaking about this gap. Okie dokie, now I have to pound it in. And now I'm polishing the handle very fast with a piece of sandpaper, and I gave some anti-rust protection for this hammerhead. And finally I'm adding varnish, which got frozen in the winter, that's why it's so thick. Let's hope it even dries. It's water-based. This is what I got in the end, a pretty fine looking hammer. Okay. subscribe and stuff, and bell notification.